So initially, my first impressions were mixed, maybe even a little underwhelmed, and then I played it for a couple of days. Welcome back to the channel, I'm Jay. So I've had the Switch 2 now for 3 or 4 days, since launch day, as I'm recording this on the Sunday of release of the video. And I've had a little bit of time to play with it, digest my thoughts, and share some first impressions. This is not a review. I'm not going to deep dive the hardware, I'm not going to tear it down, break down every feature, explain the whole thing in and out. There's loads of videos that do that. These are just my impressions, just my thoughts on the console, what I've made of the games I've played so far, and to try and give you a bit of an idea as to whether or not this is worth it for you. Now ultimately that's completely subjective. What's value to me may not be value to you, but I thought I'd share my thoughts and position, and if you're into the same things I am and you're on a similar wavelength, maybe it'll help you with your buying choice or help you justify a purchase you've already made. So let's start with the hardware, as that's the obvious place to get going. And I have to say, as soon as I unboxed this, I instantly got that premium feeling. You can see where the money's gone. You've got a nice big display, certainly a step up from the original Switch, and the premium feel of the Joy-Cons. The plastic they've used, the way that it holds in your hand, the feeling of the larger analog sticks. And as a guy with big hands, the Switch at times was quite challenging. I really loved the idea of the Joy-Cons. And in the hands of my children and my wife, they play well. But I could never get on with kind of holding them and trying to use those triggers and playing multiplayer games. I think on the Switch 2, the controller size is much bigger. Not to the point where smaller hands won't be able to accommodate it, but it feels more accessible. The screen is gorgeous. I know there was a lot of criticism in the press about an LCD and everyone clamouring for an OLED, and it's going to feel like a backward step if you had the OLED, etc. Well, I've had both. I had the launch Switch, I bought the OLED Switch, and I'll be honest, obviously side by side, those two devices, one is better than the other. You've got a slightly bigger screen with less bevel, and you've got the OLED. But the LCD never looked poor to me. I never looked at this and thought this feels cheap. And I think the same is true of the new LCD on the Switch 2. It is bigger, obviously, which feels good. It's got a nice weight to it. The screen is super clear, the colours are beautiful, the Nintendo games in general always look the part. So I don't think you'll be disappointed. Even if you've got the OLED model, I think you'll look at this and still feel like this is worth playing on, it's worthwhile. I've no doubt there'll be an OLED model in the future. You know, it's going to be another probably £100 increase on the price. And if you want to wait for it, then, you know, if you can wait to play some of these exclusives, Mario Kart World will come on to, then, you know, maybe in a couple of years' time you're going to get that OLED model. But right now, is it a step backwards? I don't think so. It doesn't feel like it. So if you're sitting there with your OLED Switch, or you've got some other kind of OLED portable device, and this is a reason not to buy, fine, I get that. But for me, not a problem, not an issue at all. Other than the physical hardware, the Switch itself, of course you've got the dock. I don't know there's a huge amount to say about the dock. In reality, once it's plugged in, you don't really think about it. It's just there. Does it look pretty? Not particularly. It's a little bigger than the previous dock. I'm looking to my left here and comparing them. I'll show you some B-roll. It's slightly bulkier, really not by much, considering that it's got a fan in there now, and of course it's upscaling to 4K, so that's a nice benefit as well. It does bring the Switch 2 on par now with my PS5 and Xbox Series X from a visual fidelity perspective, and that's a nice to have. But I think really the dock is a plug it in and forget about it kind of accessory, so probably not too much more to say there. As well as my console, I also bought with mine the new Pro Controller, and I got a camera accessory, which I'll talk about now. So Pro Controller wise, feels good. It's got the same soft touch plastic that the console itself has, which does feel nice. It's ever so slightly smaller than the original Pro Controller for the Switch, and of course now we've got the addition of the back buttons and the C button for online chat. But really, other than that, there's very, very little in it. I really like the original Switch Pro Controller, so that's by no means a criticism. I do think we're at that point now when you look at the Xbox and controllers and the changes from the 360 to the Xbox One to the Series X, we're talking small margins. This feels very similar. You know, the Pro Controller for the Wii U was okay. The Switch Pro Controller was very good, very popular. I like the translucent plastic. This one looks absolutely in line with the mainline console. It's a little underwhelming, it's a little boring, I'm not going to lie, but it feels good and it plays well, and that's really all that matters, I guess. You're not going to spend too much time looking at it when you're deep in your game. In terms of the camera accessory, I would say 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 from a novelty value, Nintendo branding aesthetics perspective. Functionality wise, probably better to spend the extra 10 or 15 pounds on the main Nintendo Switch camera. So if you don't know the difference here, the one that I bought is the third-party one. That is, it's excellent from a branding perspective. Like I said, it's the Piranha plant. The mouth opens and closes to obscure the camera. It's got a flexible neck. It even has the leaves that go around the neck, come separate in the box, so you can position them where suitable on the device. And what I really do like is that the neck comes out of the plant pot so that you can have it just attached to the Switch handheld if you want to use the camera that way, which I do think actually gives it a competitive advantage over the main camera, and then it docks back in the plant pot. The biggest drawback, I think, is that it's 480p. And that, I think, in kind of modern days, in 2025, is unforgivable from a camera's perspective. Maybe 720p you could have got away with, but 480p really shows on a 4K screen. When that camera preview pops up for you to position your faces for the different games, I can touch on that later on, it looks bloody awful. There's no other way to sort of spell it out, really. So again, I'm sure when separated from the plant pot, docked on the Switch for one face, it's going to do the job it needs to do. For the the multi-person in a room functionality that the mainline camera offers, I think this is a bit of a letdown. Even with just me and my wife next to each other on the beanbag couch, couldn't really comfortably get us both in any kind of meaningful quality. So I suspect if you're looking to buy the camera for the features that it provides, you're probably going to be better off, if you've got a family around the console, buying the HD one. If you're just playing with it for yourself and you just want it for you, and like me, you like the idea of the novelty value of the Piranha plant sat on your side table, then by all means, this is going to function well. It's going to do what it needs to do. I don't think it's essential yet for any of the Switch experiences. Let's see further down the line if it's anything more than a gimmick. But right now, probably at 480p, a little underwhelming. One other thing to say about the controllers, which I do want to touch on before I move on to software, and I raised this question in my Switch 2 kind of am I going to pre-order one impressions video, was about the compatibility with older hardware. So there was talk that the Switch Pro controller itself from the previous generation would absolutely be compatible, which was good news, but there was no real confirmation as to whether that would extend to third-party devices. Now, I can't confirm from a third-party device perspective right now. Give me a month and I will be able to when my son gets his Switch 2, which is for his birthday. He doesn't know he's got it yet, so even my Switch 2 at the moment is a secret in the household. But he's got a few of the PowerA controllers, which we love in this house. They work really well, nice controllers. I'll test those out on the Switch 2 when I can. What I did get to test out was that Pro controller compatibility, and it absolutely works. And the second thing I got to test out was the GameCube controller that I already had. I think it was released around the time Smash Brothers came out on the original Switch. And I bought the grey version, looked like the Wavebird, which I always loved as a kid. I've still got my Wavebird now. And the reason I specifically held back on the purple Switch 2 GameCube controllers was because I did wonder whether my existing controller would be compatible. Now, it's had very little use, to be quite honest, like a lot of my gaming stuff, unfortunately. So I thought, well, I'm not going to spend another £65 or £70 on a controller that I might use sparingly anyway for the GameCube retro games that are now on Switch 2. I'll wait and test it. And I'm happy to report that it absolutely works. So now this is a first-party Nintendo controller, so again, I can't talk for third-party, but it's outside of the spectrum of the Pro controller that was the only thing that was officially confirmed. So by all means, check the internet. I'm sure there'll be loads of other people doing lots of tests. But I was able to connect the GameCube Switch controller to my Switch 2 and play the GameCube retro games on the console absolutely fine. And it felt really, really good, actually. Very, very positive experience, which I'll touch on again in a second. So before we move on to the software, I guess just to kind of wrap up the hardware thoughts, I would say 2 thumbs up for me in terms of quality. It feels good. The size upgrade is very welcome. I think the premium feel is certainly there. I would say maybe at the price point, that's going to be slightly concerning for parents who might be putting these in the hands of their children. The larger screen does feel nice again for me in my hands. How that will play out for smaller hands, again, I'll keep you posted in the future. But all in all, I'm really happy with the device. The hardware as a whole, I think it works. And I will say, as we bleed into the software part of this video, the way that the hardware drives the software, clearly the power upgrade that this has had after kind of 8 years since the first Switch definitely plays to its advantage. The software, the interface, the OS definitely benefits from it. So let's move on to the software, where I think, for me initially at least, things get a little bit grayer in terms of my impressions. So first of all, the hardware-software link, the OS, the eShop specifically, it feels much snappier, more responsive. It feels like we've got software now that has the appropriate hardware to run it. There were certain times I felt that the Switch just didn't feel like it had enough grunt to run the software in the way that it wanted to be run, and the eShop was a standing joke from day one that it was slow to load, frustrating to use. That's not the case on the Switch 2. It's much more responsive, much easier to get going with. Likewise, the menu systems and everything else, fine. Setup process. Now, this is software related. I thought was a bit frustrating. If you haven't seen already, Nintendo did a bit of a change to the Switch's OS shortly before release, moving from the old digital download to various devices. As long as you're logged in as the primary account, you can play the game, blah, 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 sharing feature, to a new virtual cartridge concept. Now, again, I'm not going to get into great detail here, but the basic principle is you can now have 2 Switch consoles that are paired together that can freely transfer digital cartridges at a whim. So you can load them from your account into either one, but they can only ever be on one. Then, if you've got a family account on Nintendo and you've got more Switches in your household, as we do here, then you can loan games. Now, the requirements there are that you have to be connected in a family account and that you have to be in close proximity to the Switch at the point that you want to loan the cartridge, the virtual cartridge. And when you load the virtual cartridge, you then got 2 weeks until it expires and you have to do the same process again. Now that's a challenge in our house. So just very quickly, our setup, we've got a Switch 2, we've got 3 other Switches around the house. For one is mine, and then 2 for the kids that my wife also uses. Now, what we used to do is the primary account was actually the kids' Switch, and any purchases I made on my personal Switch were freely available to them to download and play, and that worked perfectly fine. We do a similar thing with the Xbox. The issue now is that the primary situation has kind of gone, and instead now you have this concept of 2 mainline paired Switches, and then everybody else has to be in your family. And the way that mine are currently set up, which is the reason why this setup process was frustrating, is that my Switch 2 is now paired to one of the other OLED Switches, but not the mainline Switch, which means that all the games my son used to freely play digitally now aren't working. So for the next few weeks, until he gets his new console, he can't play some of those older games, or at least not without me taking the Switch 2 out and doing that proximity thing. It's not a massive problem, and I understand why this has been done, and I'm not even sure I have a perfect solution for this that meets both Nintendo's kind of software protection needs and our desires as gamers to be able to freely play our games anywhere. I am fortunate that a lot of our more recent purchases over the last couple of years have been cartridges in physical games, so he can just play those anywhere, and that all works exactly as it did. But why is that an issue with the software setup? Well, we had some serious fun in games. So when I started the console up, first of all, signing in, getting yourself set up, that didn't generally take too long. Then I wanted to move data and my profiles from my existing Switch to the new one. Only my existing Switch wasn't in that paired circuit. The paired consoles were the mainline Switch, the one the kids used, and the secondary one my wife uses, which meant that I had to unpair one of those in order to activate mine. Now, as it happened, my mainline Switch was turned off. It had been on holiday with us and it still hadn't come out from where it had been packed. So we had to scramble around, find it, turn it on, unpair, and then I could start loading games onto my new Switch 2. That was really annoying, and I don't know how many times I had to sign in with a QR code to my Nintendo account on different devices, both on the mobile app and the console, before eventually I got everything set up. It was late on the day. I had the Switch in my house, as you've seen from the opening video, for a good few hours before I could start playing with it. And what I didn't show you is that as soon as I finished work, I actually went on to being a dad, did dad duties and didn't get to touch it until all the kids had gone to bed. I was tired by that point. I'd had a busy week trying to get stuff done for work so I could have Friday off to enjoy the console and make some of this content. I was tired and frustrated, and this extra setup steps really didn't help. So at this point, I'm getting quite wound up, losing my patience. And I then land on the OS, and I was underwhelmed. It didn't give me that new console feel that I was looking for. Now, I know that things have changed, and my kind of old memories of going from the N64 to the GameCube to the Wii, from the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3 to whatever, those kind of big hardware generational leaps don't really happen anymore, and I get that. But this is the most underwhelming change from one OS to another, even when you look at PS5 and Xbox Series X now. PS5 was a sort of facelift, but very similar in navigation in many ways to a PS4. Series X even closer probably to the original Xbox One interface. But the Switch is identical. It's the same experience, just on a slightly bigger screen. It doesn't look or feel different. It has all the boring trappings of the original Switch, which in itself was complained about anyway. 2 colours, white or black interface, standard strip of the games you've played recently, your settings options, and that is literally it. And it works, don't get me wrong, it's fine as an interface, no major criticism from a software perspective. But it just lacks some of the excitement that I would want from a new console. It didn't feel new. What I would liken it to is when you upgrade your phone, and if you're an iPhone user like me, you buy your new iPhone 2 or 3 years down the line, you get all excited, you get the hardware out, you restore your backup, everything looks exactly the same as it did in your old phone, and you exhaust the couple of new features that you've now got that your new hardware unlocks, and within a day, it starts to feel very familiar again. Now, familiarity is good. That means that it's consistent and the experience is there and you don't have to learn anything new, and I get that. But also, when you're paying several £100s for a brand new console and you've waited 8 years, I would have just liked a little something to get me excited about that interface, and unfortunately it wasn't there. So I would say initial impressions of the operating system side of the software were a little underwhelming, mixed. Not the most exciting, and did take a little bit of the gloss off the new console feel. As I say though, I will caveat all of that by saying at this point I'm quite tired and frustrated. All I want to do is get Mario Kart World downloaded and give it a little go, and so that may have played into it to some degree. Which then brings me on to the games. So in terms of what I picked up and what you can play that is Switch 2 exclusive, Mario Kart World, I got the pack-in version, which really is the only kind of economical way to buy that game. I would have loved to have had the physical cartridge, but at nearly twice the price to get the console and the game separately. Just wasn't going to do that, not with Mario Kart getting jacked up to £80 as well. So I bought Mario Kart World. Got that downloading. I also downloaded, because I have the Nintendo membership with the expansion pass, whatever they call it, I downloaded the Switch 2 editions of both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So I also have the Switch 2 versions of those games to play. Now I'm very excited about that because I didn't really get that far into Breath of the Wild, despite putting several hours into it back in 2017. And I didn't start Tears of the Kingdom because of the performance issues that I read about online and how it was really stretching the Switch. I thought I'd wait. I'm glad I did because it hasn't cost me anything and I can now experience it on faster, more performant hardware. I also picked up Split Fiction, which is the new what's the studio called now? I can't remember. But it's the guys who make the exclusive multiplayer co-op games. And I've been and ahhing about picking it up for the PS5. The reason I didn't was I was just waiting for it to drop in price, to be honest, because I thought it was something fun to play with my wife, but I wasn't desperate to buy it. Saw that it was out on the Switch. Thought about buying it physically, but it's a code in the box, so I thought, well, probably not worth it. It was £45 on the eShop, but I paid £29 for it on CD Keys, and I've downloaded it and it all works. It's all legit. So I don't know why that's so much cheaper, but if you're looking for some digital-only games for your Switch and Split Fiction interests you, check out CD Keys. It was £29. That is £16, nearly a third of the price, and it's a brand new release game. So don't know why that is, but I've picked up Split Fiction. I was hoping to have played it before I recorded this video to give you some impressions. My wife and I were going to play it last night, but we were out with the kids during the day, exhausted by the time we got back, and we just never got it started. So I'll let you know how that was though in a few weeks' time. I also thought about that $7.99, what should have been pack-in game, the Switch Tour. I have left it for now. If I really get the urge to buy some new games to play that are Switch 2 exclusives, I might pick it up to have a look at. There are a couple of other games on the Switch Store as well. I thought about Cyberpunk, but I already own it on the Xbox and the PS5, so I thought I don't need that anywhere else. So my experience for the time being is going to be those Nintendo exclusives, which is primarily how I use my Switch anyway, and of course Split Fiction. So let's talk about what I have played and give you my first thoughts. So we'll start off with the GameCube Retro Classics app, which is now Switch 2 exclusive and comes with 3 games at launch. So again, I played all of these with my Switch, original Switch GameCube controller. So I started off with F-Zero, and I had a few races on F-Zero, and I have to say it really holds up well. I love F-Zero on the GameCube anyway. That was a long time favourite of mine back in the day. Really pleased to see that it translates well to a nice HD screen. Of course, you're playing in the 4:3 ratio. You've got those little pillar bits down the side of the game, but it looks really, really good. Now I was playing this with the CRT mode turned off. There is a filter you can turn on. I'll show you that a bit further into the video. But I was playing that with that turned off, and I thought the game looked and ran really, really well. And although I haven't really dipped into some of the other retro classics on the Switch, like the N64 or the SNES, I thought I'd give this one a whirl just to kind of give you a broader experience of what was available on day one for the Switch. And like I said, F-Zero played really well, fast, fun, sharp, looked really good. Overall, really, really impressed with how that played. I only played it for maybe 30 minutes, just to kind of give it a bit of a blast. But yeah, really enjoyed that. I can absolutely see myself going back and playing some more of that. Really enjoyed that game. I then moved on to Soul Calibur 2, which is another absolute banger from back in the day. If you remember this, upon release there were effectively, well, not 3 versions, it was the same game, but there were 3 different characters exclusive to the different consoles. For Nintendo, you got Link, which was great fun, and I had to go with Link. If you don't know about this, then I'll just quickly recap the others. PS2 had Heihachi from Tekken, which I thought was the most underwhelming of the 3, and the one I never played because I didn't own an original Xbox was the Xbox release, which had Spawn, which frankly I think was probably the cooler of all 3, personal opinion. But I played this, again, just for half an hour or so, just to test it out. Again, super playable, super revisitable. It was smooth, it was fast, it was fun. It felt to modern standards in terms of a game. It looked obviously a little basic in terms of graphics, but it was sharp, it was fast moving, you know, really brought back that nostalgia, because I played a lot of Soul Calibur 2 back in the day, and again, translates really well. Now I know we're not going as far back with the GameCube as we are with things like, you know, an N64 or beyond, so you would expect them to hold up a little better in the modern day. But we are still talking about a system that's got to be, what, 20 years old at this point? I don't know the exact date the GameCube released. Feel free to correct me there if I'm wildly off in the comments. And then the third game, which took a little bit longer to play because of the amount of intro, was the Wind Waker, Zelda the Wind Waker. And again, I played this one back on the GameCube. It wasn't my favourite. I'm still an Ocarina of Time boy, although I do think I reflect more positively on Wind Waker decades on than I did at the time. I wasn't really interested in the cel shading art style. I wanted like modern realism from my graphics, but I reflect on it now, and actually because of those graphical styles it translates to modern screens incredibly well. Now there is of course the HD version that was released for the Wii U, so this is not that. This is the GameCube version, 4:3 ratio and all the trappings of that era, so don't expect any kind of modern bells or whistles or full 16:9 ratio screen gaming here. I did also try this with and without the CRT filter on, so I'll show you both those bits of footage so that you can see the difference. I actually think after a little bit of time on the CRT one I preferred it, but only because of the nostalgia vibes. You know, inarguably the filterless version is sharper and cleaner from modern standards. But again, as a game, holds up really well. Camera's a little bit trickier. Now this is, you know, obviously a full 3D game here. Unlike Soul Calibur where you've got a fixed perspective and F-Zero similarly, this one, you know, we are moving the camera around, but it's far more playable than something like an N64 where there was no sense of a second stick. So, you know, I think Zelda Wind Waker, again, if you love those games and you want another way to play it through, I bet that's going to be really good fun, especially in handheld, just on the move, being able to pick that game up, drop in, drop out, do a little bit, you know, really, really good way to enjoy it. That was the extent of the GameCube games currently available. There are more that were advertised. There were more actually promoted for release, I think, when the adverts went through. I'm sure Mario Sunshine was in there amongst others. None of them are there yet. I guess they'll drip feed these onto the console as and when they're ready, while they're dealing with other software bugs and issues along the way for other titles. So then I'll move on to talk about Mario Kart World, which on the night I played it, again, I will take you back to where I was mentally on that night. After a long day and frustrating setup process, I probably wasn't in the best frame of mind to play. However, my wife and I sat down and we just went straight into multiplayer, and it was fine. I enjoyed it. We did a bit of 50cc just to start ourselves off, which was kind of probably didn't help with my first impressions because it was slow, it felt sluggish, you know, as 50cc always does, but we quickly went through the motions and got up to something more playable. I think with what put me off initially was that, again, we're talking about here a price-defining, you know, new price-defining game here. I'm sure all games in a few months' time will be £80 and that'll just be it. But Mario Kart started that trend and it set that price point and it set itself out as something better than everything else that's around it. And my first impressions when you first load in is that the menus are almost identical with a different font to Mario Kart 8, a game that is now a decade old. And when you get into the gameplay, it felt similar. There was nothing overly innovative. Some new tracks, some new weapons, but it was the same old Mario Kart. Now, we played for a couple of hours, we still had a good time. I'm not saying that it's a bad game, my first impressions were a bit underwhelming. We put it down, we went to bed, I got up the next day and I started to put together more thoughts and content for this video. I started to play some of the other games, and then we came back to Mario Kart World on the evening and I did a stream. If you didn't see it, then you can check the on demand if you want to go and watch that back. But I did two and a bit hours on stream. Started off playing on my own for a little bit and chatting to some of the subscribers who were with me at that point, and then my wife sat down and joined me. We had a few head-to-heads, and then my daughter came in and also played, and we did a bit of 3-player. And I have to say, that's when things started to turn for me. Now the reason for that, I think, is that shortly before, as I mentioned earlier, my son doesn't know about the Switch 2 yet, we were playing as a family Mario Kart 8 on the Switch. And it wasn't until I went back to Mario Kart 8 from having played World the night before that I realised how framey it was, how much it was struggling with the Switch hardware, and the graphics as well, which are not bad by any stretch. But I think it was by going back that I could then more appropriately receive and accept what I was seeing from the Switch 2, and I realised how much better it looked, how much sharper and cleaner it was, how much faster and better it performed. And then actually when we played together on that evening, we played through a whole load more of the tracks. We did some of the Knockout event, which is the new kind of Fortnite-esque version. You effectively play a really long race across four different tracks, all in one go strung together. And after every track, so many of the races are stripped away. And you can have a total of 24 races on any race now, which feels frenetic. We played several hours, had an absolute blast. It's faster, it's frenetic, it's more aggressive. The tracks are wider, everyone stacks up more, there's more weapons going off, it's more chaotic. It's a lot of really arcade heavy fun. It's not as much into the sort of, if Mario Kart was ever hardcore racing, I don't know. It's not as much into the racing as it was. It does feel more arcadey, more shooty, blasty, pow, kind of that. I don't know, that's a really bad way of describing it, but you get what I mean. But in a really good way. I haven't touched the free roam yet. I've heard mixed things about the world there, but it looks fun. It looks like something to mess around with. What I will say is I think there's a whole load more to be gotten out of the core game, despite now having gone through every race and unlocked the Special Cup. The new techniques that have been added that I haven't really explored yet, like the rail grinding, like the wall riding, those things now have to be instigated and selected by you as you race, and you choose your path in a way that you didn't used to. And I think that as people get used to the game and explore some of those tips and tricks, and we see people on YouTube who are far better at gaming than me doing some really cool stuff on those tracks, we're all going to be having our minds blown at just kind of how versatile these races are. So after night one, I hadn't had the best first impressions, but after night two, I was thoroughly enjoying it. It was very obvious where those improvements were after revisiting the old one, and we had so much fun racing as a group. I can't wait to dive in online. If you've got a Switch 2 and you're watching along and you want to get pal up and play some online races with me and more members of the community, let us know down in the comments below, because I'd really like to do that. I think there's lots more fun to be had from this, and like Mario Kart has always been a drop-in, drop-out game for me. I think the free roam and just being able to cruise around there, find things and explore, as Nintendo inevitably adds more to this game, will just make that replayability even greater than it was before. And I'm sure once our second Switch 2 is gifted to my son in a few weeks' time, then Mario Kart will become a staple for us for many evenings to come. So Mario Kart World, excellent game. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's talk about then the Switch 2 editions of Zelda, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Now, very quick caveat, I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom yet. I still haven't started it. I had fully intended to for this video, but I put Breath of the Wild on first, and I loaded up my 2017 save, which is embarrassing, and I hadn't got very far. I didn't even beat one of the elite weapons or whatever they're called, and it looks stunning. It's breathed. I can't really use that word, can I, given the game title, but it has. It's breathed new life into this game. It did never look bad to me, but now it looks polished. It looks and feels new again. It's fast, it's snappy, higher frame rates, better visuals. And I found myself thinking, maybe I should actually go back and finish Breath of the Wild first, or at least give it more time. So I haven't started Tears of the Kingdom intentionally because I want to consider going back in and doing a little bit more Breath of the Wild first. I did buy not long ago the really chunky hardcover guides for both games. I'm thinking about dusting one of those off and having a go. The biggest challenge is I can't remember how to play it, and I don't remember where I've gotten to. Like I said, I haven't done any of the creatures yet. Divine Beasts, that's the word. Haven't done any of them yet. But I might do it, and if you fancy helping me with that, if you did play it and complete it, I might even do it on stream, and maybe through the chat you can help guide me, and maybe we'll get through that game together. All I want to do really is get through the main story beats and roll credits as fast as humanly possible, because that's what I really want to do, so I can then start Tears of the Kingdom. But I do feel, having just played it for just that short period, that it's really reinvigorated the game in a way that's made me seriously think about going back and carrying on, because I loved it when I played it. I fell off it really just like I do many games, because other things got released and my mind got taken away, or I put the game down for too long and forgot what I was doing. So yeah, part of me thinks that maybe I should revisit. But all I will say, if you're umming and ahhing about those Switch 2 editions, if you've still got the first ones and you're already paying for the membership, then it's obviously a no-brainer. They're free. Why would you not at least go and have a look? At £10 an upgrade, if you're not paying for that, I think that's absolutely value for money. Especially if, like me, you either hadn't got round to starting one of those games or haven't finished it, but you want to go back. Your save game and all of that good stuff comes over with you, so you can carry on playing it. And would I buy it brand new if I'd never touched them before? Yes, I absolutely would. I would say get Switch 1 and then upgrade. That may work out cheaper, but I don't know that once you've bothered to track down one of the original games and then bought the upgrades, whether that will work out much cheaper. I know that the Switch games tend to hold their money, especially the Zelda games, and I think CEX, probably knowing that this loophole, if you like, is there for people to buy cheap and upgrade, will probably jack the price on them anyway. So I don't know, maybe perhaps just buy them outright at Switch 2, who knows. So anyway, I've gone on way longer than I intended. As you can tell, I've got lots of thoughts on this and I'm excited about it. Happy to kind of address any of those thoughts you've got in the comments below. If you've got any questions, your own opinions, I'd love to hear them. I'm really excited to kind of hoover up now all the content on YouTube from people talking about these, to understand what that kind of general consensus is. Has this gone down well? Are people overwhelmed, underwhelmed, happy with their purchases, considering returning them? I don't know. I think these are not going to be as scarce as perhaps the Switch 1 were. I've seen a lot of posts online suggesting that stores have stock, that they are readily available, which is both a good thing if you want one, maybe not as good a thing from Nintendo if they were hoping to sell these things like gangbusters and get rid of them. I don't think this will be the kind of flop that the Wii U was to the Wii. I know Nintendo tend to have those sort of next system, post-success system failures. I don't think this will be it. I think this is ultimately a hardware step up, but we are very much on the Switch ecosystem. We're in the Switch world, and therefore there probably isn't an urgency to buy one of these. You probably don't need to have one on day one, unless you're an influencer, content creator. I don't put myself in that bucket, by the way. I'm a tech enthusiast and super nerd. One of those as well, though. Unless you absolutely have to have these things on day one, I think for most people, Switch 2 can probably wait at least a few months, unless you need Mario Kart now. And there's a lot of buzz around it. It's a great game, but unless you need that right now, there probably isn't any other really compelling reason, as a lot of the other games are kind of remasters or remakes or, ports, to run out and buy one. Now, once Donkey Kong comes out in July, if it's as good as everyone is hoping it's going to be, that might change the story a little bit. Metroid obviously comes out in a few months' time as well. Now, again, Daddy's going to be on both consoles, so it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But just based on the performance uplift of the games I've already got, from Switch to Switch 2, I think Switch 2 is going to be the only place to play Metroid, frankly. And then we'll see. Pokemon, again, is coming out on both consoles, so that's not necessarily going to be a system seller. But again, I'm sure the visual fidelity, the performance, etc. is going to be better. I've seen some comparison videos of Scarlet and Violet running on the Switch 2, and apparently that looks really good now, so I might go back to that, as I dropped off that fairly quickly due to the performance issues on the Switch. So there's lots to like about the Switch 2. I'm certainly not disappointed. I'm not sat here thinking, did I need it? I probably should send it back. For me, it was a purchase I'm happy to have made, and we're going to get a lot of good times from the Switch 2. But I am used to buying overly priced hardware and then watching it gather dust for large periods of time, which is not something I'm proud of. It's just the reality of the way my brain works and the way that my games room exists and operates. So I'm not disappointed. Do you need it right now? Questionable. I would say unless you are absolutely dying to play Mario Kart, maybe let it breathe. Give it a couple of months. Also, let's see if there's any problems with these things, because we don't know yet, and then go from there. But anyway, I'm really happy with mine. It's a positive experience, but perhaps one that is not essential. And that's where I'll leave it. Thank you for watching. As always, comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, especially if you've got one. What are your first impressions? Do we agree? If we don't, be nice about it, but tell me. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I am desperately pushing towards that 500 mark. At the point of releasing this, I'm about 7 short. So come on, be one of those 7. Get me over the line. And yeah, I'll leave you there for today. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.